Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
And we have a returning correspondent as part of Correspondent Week. James, I do like it when they disappear for a year, but they come back. It's a very satisfying
You
feeling.
like it when they disappear for a year, isn't it?
No, I like it when they come back. And they're still our correspondents, even when they drop down to the Champions League Championship. Anyway, who do we have?
I like it when they come back as well, because it saves me having to look for new papers. Quite handy, actually. The Badgers back in town. Let me introduce you to Mark Hammond, our Norwich correspondent. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me back on the show.
You're very welcome, mate. You sort of invited yourself. I've got a 6-word opening statement for yourself.
Go for it.
Liverpool, City, Leicester, Arsenal. Welcome back.
I know. The thing is, you look forward to it, and then the fixtures drop, and then that's it. And do you remember 2 years ago, we had pretty much the same thing. When I came on for the very first time, I said, like, 3 out of the first 5 were a nightmare, weren't they? And I said, look, I was looking forward to it again. And we had the league champions, the Champions League winners, and the Europa League winners. And this time it ain't much different, is it? So tricky.
Well, you've got the league champions, FA Cup winners.
You've basically got 3 good teams in Arsenal. I mean, there's a case to say that progressively they get easier, but I mean, that is brutal.
It's brutal. Yeah, it couldn't be much worse, could it, really?
No. It does let you have a swing at nothing and just go for it in the opening games, because no one's expecting you to win in any of those. So even if you come away with 2 or 4 points or something like that, a win and draw out of them somewhere, you'd be really happy.
You'd like to think we won't lose them all. I mean, yeah, on paper, and if you was a betting man, there's every chance you might, but surely not. Surely you've got to nick a point from somewhere. It might well come when people don't expect it, i.e. the first game.
The good news is, because there has to be 2 sides to this story, right? It's a horrendous start, but game week 5, arguably up to Tottenham away in game week 15, and there's every chance you can include that if you want to, depending on the situation we're in, is a brilliant run. There is Chelsea away in the middle of it, but either side, Watford, Everton, Burnley, Brighton, and Leeds, Brentford, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle. That's a very good run.
We need to pick up points in that period. Specifically, like you just sort of said, game week 11 onwards, Brentford, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle. You've got to be talking sort of maybe 2-3 wins out of that lot, because that's your opportunity then to get some points, isn't it? The only thing is about the start is obviously there's a lot of pressure on game week 5, Watford. If God forbid you lose the first 4, then that 5th one just becomes so much pressure straight away that early on to win that.
Yeah, I think individually that you're quite right to highlight that individually, that little period, Watford, you'll want to win it. It was a really big game for you 2 years ago as well, which you'd lost. I want to say it was a Friday night game, actually.
It was, yeah.
Everton away, which you did win that fixture a couple of years ago. Burnley away, Brighton at home. Those 4 individually in isolation aren't the best. You would obviously want to win the Watford game. You're quite right. That 11 to 14 little period. But I think once we get to the end of game week 4, and a lot of the fixture swings are game week 4, yours is game week 5. And it might,
a lot of people will be pressing the wildcard button potentially around that sort of time, won't they?
So although let's not bullshit the listeners and say we're going to try and sell them 3 Norwich players for game week 1. I don't think we are, unless we're trying to sell them players that are going to sit on the bench at the start. But it's to be aware that it's going to come back round quite quickly, where there is a good sustained run for Norwich.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you just said, I haven't got any of my initial game week 1 draft. You'd be silly to if you're playing the game seriously. To start with them and to play with them. The value is better elsewhere. The fixtures are better elsewhere. But like you say, the bench fodder options, there are 3 or 4 options where there is value if you're looking to save some money, and don't have to include them. Everyone's going to need 1 or 2 players just to sit there on the bench, do the job, who are playing. And I think Norwich have got probably 3 options, I would say. Well, certainly 2 anyway.
Talk to us about them.
Okay, so Andrew on the Bamadelli. Tricky to say for some. I know. I've seen a few people.
Mark, say it again. Say it again, please, Mark.
Omo Bamidele. A lot of people.
Do you mind if I just call him Delhi? Is that all right? I'm going to get it wrong.
Just call him Big Andy. It's just easier, isn't it? So basically, he's a 19-year-old, came into the Norwich team towards the end of last season. Ben Gibson got injured, played the last 8 games. So he's now above Christoph Zimmerman in the pecking order for centre-backs. If we was to sign someone, he'd probably be 4th choice. But as it stands, Grant Hanley hasn't played a pre-season fixture yet, having got injured at the Euros. So the most recent friendly we've had, it was Gibson and Omobamidele at the back. So Omobamidele's 4.0. We're now very, very close to the season starting, and he's played all 4 friendlies. We should have had more friendlies. Coventry was cancelled and Sheffield United was cancelled because of COVID, but he's played every minute of every game so far at the back. He's a 19-year-old, big, 6 foot plus centre back, and he looks good. And from my neck of the woods, people are saying he's a better prospect than Ben Godfrey was at his age. So his development is spot on. So if he's certainly not gonna, I'm not saying he's going to play every minute of every game all season, but he's certainly one to keep an eye on.
Omobamidele.
That's the one.
Nailed it. Right.
Have a go, Suj.
Omobamidele.
There you go. We've got it. We're there.
Also known as Big Andy.
Big Andy. What's his first name?
Andrew.
Simple.
It's Andrew, isn't it? It's not Big Andy. It's Andrew. Omobamidele. No, that's quite easy to say, actually. Is he, in your opinion, Mark, and I know it sounds like there's things tweaking there where it might open up for him, and unbelievably, 7 minutes into the Norwich podcast, you have sold us a player. Congratulations. Is there a chance that he would become first choice, in your opinion? And we know we're saying, as it stands, he could start game week 1, but could he actually establish himself there?
Yeah, I think so. I think, if everyone was fit, he wouldn't have even had any minutes under his belt probably now, because Gibson and Hanley would have carried on the season. He might have played the last game once we was promoted. But, in all honesty, Gibson and Hanley looked rock solid last season together. So they was the first choice. They still are probably the first choice. But I think probably similar to 2 years ago, where Cantwell, no one was expecting him to start at Liverpool. And from what we'd seen before, we were shocked. I think by all accounts, this lad's come back, done well all summer, got himself in really good shape. He's caught the eye. Now he's getting a run of games. There's not quite such an urgency now to buy another centre-back. I think we need one. I think we need a good 4th choice centre-back. So, but the only thing is they're sort of saying they're not going to get someone who's not better than what we've already got. So they're in a bit of a situation. I don't know quite what they're going to do with that, really. Because Zimmerman proved sort of 2 years ago that he's not really good enough, didn't he, at Premier League level?
To clarify, Hanley and what's his injury status is unknown. I mean, we should say we're recording this on the 4th.
Unknown. The most recent friendly, Gillingham, Tuesday night, sorry. There was no sign of Hanley on the bench. Gibson played his first pre-season fixture, and he played 60 minutes. So the Newcastle game on Saturday is probably one to keep an eye on. You would assume if Hanley doesn't feature in that whatsoever, then Omobamidele plays against Liverpool.
And he's ahead of Zimmerman, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And it's part interesting because what's this, episode 16, Suj? And I feel like
yes.
I feel like the only other 4.0 we've been sold is Javier Manquillo of Newcastle. And I think Sai sold that very much as if there's injuries, he might get some minutes. Mark's given us a player there. It sounds like it's going to start.
It will start the season for sure, whether he'll play throughout the season.
But just by effective of minutes, even if he picked up, let's say he picked up 4 or 5 points in the first 3 games and didn't play again, then just by effective of being a player that's 4.0 and got a few points, there will be constant recycling of investment in the player. So you're not going to worry about losing the value on it.
No, I'd probably, if I knew I was going to have a 4.0 defender, I'd probably be holding my breath for a Brandon Williams low move or
I'm not sure
low move. But
He would start for us as it stands, though. That's the thing. I mean, certainly he's been heavily linked. Southampton as well were after him, but I don't think there's anything imminent with that. But I think they're certainly looking at him because he can cover left back and right back, can't he? Which is basically Sam Byram got injured, a year and a half ago against Liverpool. He could cover right back and left back. He's still not fit. So I don't think he's a million miles off, but I'm not sure how much faith they've got in, him playing, because he's been up so long, hasn't he? So really, he sort of kills two birds with one stone if he was to come. If he got his opportunity, he could potentially feature. I think he's one to. But then again, would he come to us just to sit on the bench? We'll have to see on that one.
What's first choice fullbacks in your opinion to start with, Mark?
Max
we are now.
Yeah, Max Aaron's right back.
Yeah, obviously.
And Dimitri Giannoulis left back.
We spoke about him when we recorded in May, I think it was. And you were quite high on him. He had a decent season, right?
Yeah, he joined in the January transfer window. So he played well. So basically, he came on loan, and a bit like with Ben Gibson, there was a clause basically along the lines of who got promoted. Everyone was happy. He joined. So July the 1st, we paid the money. I think it's about 6.5 million we paid for him. Full Greek international. Played 16 games for us, and he looks decent. I'll talk to you in a bit about what tactically I think we'll do. But certainly the fullbacks are sort of integral in terms of getting forward, because you saw Aaron's heat map last season. I know it's a championship, but he's almost like a right winger nowadays, and they're basically looking to do the same with Giannoulis.
See, with Williams, because we've heard, and again, we have to be careful because we're pre-recording this, we've heard strong rumours about him going to Norwich. I would say, I mean, Aaron's definite a right back as long as he stays at the club. Literally zero doubt about that. Will play every game. In the case of Williams, I don't think he's comfortable at right back anyway. And I would just be questioning why Manchester United would consider loaning him to a club like yours if he isn't going to start. If the deal happens, that would make me very, very suspicious that something's not right. Unless United looked at it and went, might be getting Trippier in, Wan-Bissaka and Trippier, Tellez and Shaw. This fellow he's got no chance of football. Whereas we can get him involved in Premier League training somewhere else, and if there's an injury, he'll get the minutes. Because from what you're saying there about Giannoulis, it doesn't sound like he's going to come out the same to me.
No, but I think the world we're living in now as well, what with COVID,
true.
For example, Aaron's played his first pre-season game against Gillingham, the most recent one, and Giannoulis did as well. We had 11 players who have been affected by COVID. Either they've had it or the isolation pre-season. We've had 2 games cancelled. So I don't think I totally agree. It does raise doubt that, would he come for no particular reason, just to sit and do the same sort of job? Alternatively, you could look at it and was like, well, there's going to be a lot of disruption in the season, one way or the other.
You need a left back, basically, is what you're saying.
I think we need someone who can play both, because the way the Norwich finances work is, I don't think we haven't got enough money to shell out a right back and a left back to cover. We've let Sam McCallum go out on loan, who's he was out on loan last year. They think he's not quite ready for Premier League. So they're looking to sort of get some covering, basically. People who, it's not just the fullback position, they're looking at sort of interchangeable positions, having a bit of rather than quantity, they're looking a bit more quality. But a lot, just people to make up the numbers is, they'd rather have sort of 18, 19 players, I think, people who can play in a few different positions.
Okay. That's interesting. I think it's interesting because I think a little bit like that, without the detail that you're giving there, the assumption would be if Brandon Williams went to you on loan, he'd come in starting 4.0. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. That's quite important. Thank you, mate. In goal, Tim Krul, there's not a doubt. I know you bought Angus Gunn, but it'd definitely be Krul, wouldn't it?
Krul, yeah. I think Angus Gunn is one for the future. I think he's a Norwich boy. He was born here. He went away 16, 17 years old. Came back to us on loan. He's a Norwich fan, so he was quite keen to. I think they've sold him the the ticket back really by saying, look, you'll be our number one at some point. I think when Krul's ready to return, presumably to Holland, and he's sort of regressed a little bit, I think Gunn will probably be our number one for the next sort of 10 years or so, you know. So I think he'll have to wait. It might be he gets an opportunity this season. Krul was injured last season. You can never say what will happen. But yeah, I think initially they'll go with Krul. Gunn will sit on the bench.
I look forward to debating him as a 4.5 million option with you in 2 years then, mate. Okay. Before we move on to some of the offensive players, because you've got some new players in as well that are of interest. Is this team different to the team that came up 2 years ago? I know some of the personnel is different, but in terms of the way you play, what's changed?
I think we're more of a sort of physical and athletic team than we were. When we was up before, we weren't strong enough, we weren't big enough, we didn't have enough experience. Defensively, we weren't good enough, and we sort of addressed a little bit of that last season, and I think a little bit with our recruitment so far, sort of this season, where we've got players in now who can, you know, they can sort of look after themselves a little bit better. We was quite a small side. We got bullied. Some of them teams, I remember that Burnley game at home after Project Restart, and do you know what I mean? We could have gone 1-0 up or whatever, but like at the end of the day, like that, we just couldn't cope with the set pieces, could we? And we couldn't defend. I think Gibson coming in's huge for us. Him and Hanley at the back, I've got no issues with them. Yeah, so generally a lot more sort of technically, rather than technically good players, people who can actually, you know, stand up to the battle a little bit.
Okay. Todd Campbell has been being linked at time of recording, as I said, is on the 4th, possibly with Aston Villa's money to join his mate Buendia, which I'll come back to. Is there any chance of that happening, in your opinion, of Todd Campbell leaving? You nodded for the benefit of those on the audio.
Yeah, I think so. The thing is, the fee's been sort of mentioned, £40 million. Like, we know he's not worth £40 million, but to us, he's worth that because it's close to the season going. If we was to offload him, that leaves us in a right old pickle, doesn't it? So he's our sort of main man now in midfield. You know, the fact like maybe he's sort of got his head away from the transfer sort of saga of last year, got his head down finally, he's come round again. So you just got to hope if he does stay with us, he can, you know, because he missed the first few games last year. I think his head was all over the place, and you've got to hope that, well, you know, if we do keep him, that's the end of that, and he'll be happy being at Norwich in the Premier League. And yeah, I mean, it's a bit unsettling at the moment, obviously, because not just him, Max Evans as well. But the thing is, if they offer £40 million, he'll go. Simple as that.
Not going to, are they? Haven't just paid you a very similar amount for Buendia. They're not going to go that high, are they, surely?
The thing is, yeah, if Campbell's worth 40 million, Buendia is probably worth 50 million. But I think it's the fact that it's getting closer to the season starting. Like I say, maybe he's in England. He's a British player, isn't he? So that counts as something.
Yes,
I think
it's very fair.
They're bidding for James Ward-Prowse as well, maybe possibly, and we're talking similar numbers, maybe a little bit more for JWP. They're not going to buy both. I can tell you that.
I think as well, we know that they've got 100 million to burn, so it's not like they can't afford it. Yeah, so I think there's a bit of fun and games going along them lines.
If 5.5, it's interesting, isn't it? If he does stay around on the other side of that transfer window, it might come back round again. Some of the, you know, Alex Iwobi at 6 million, for example. Sorry to pick out Alex Iwobi, but in comparison to that, I mean, Cantwell at 5.5. There's not too many options at that area. And when I don't, again, it's not one for the start, but when it turns, it might be actually. What can you tell us about the new players, Mark? Start with Milo Rashika, the winger, who's coming from Werder Bremen, if you can, mate.
So, in a nutshell, although they won't say as much, he's Buendia's replacement. You know, it's they don't want to put too much pressure on him, I guess. They're sort of saying he's interchangeable. He can play in a number of places, sort of up front, sort of out to the wide. He's a Kosovan international. He's our record signing, 9.4 million. Quite a lot of money for us, really, especially considering we didn't spend no money last time we came up. So, you know, it's sort of a exciting one, really. He's been at Werder Bremen for a couple of years and quite excited by him, really. Obviously, I've never watched him play. remains to be seen, but certainly one to keep an eye on. And what is he? He's priced at 5.5. Yeah, 0.4 ownership at the minute. I mean, you wouldn't punt on him initially, but you just never know. It's gonna have chances, isn't he? Like, Liverpool home game, for example. I'm not expecting us to create too many chances at Man City, but the Liverpool home game, I'd be surprised if we don't have a few chances. So all eyes on him, really.
These players, particularly at the 5.5, we're not starting with a Norwich player at 5.5 for the opening four. And it's not a Norwich thing. This could have been one of probably 10 teams. If you'd have had that opening set of 4 fixtures, it's no interest, mate. But these guys like Rashika might do. If we see promise in those first 4 fixtures, and the stat boys are on it, and all his underlying stats, and he's created these chances against these big clubs. What can he do against weaker teams? We might be talking about him come game week 5.
I think there's a shift in formation as well in our most recent friendly. Rather than a 4-2-3-1, I think we're now going to be playing a 4-3-2-1 with sort of almost like, if you like, 2 number 10s and rely on the width from Aarons and Giannoulis. So the 2 number 10s would be the chap we just mentioned, Milo Rashika and Todd Campbell as it stands, which leaves the midfield triangle probably of Gilmour sitting deepest. I think they'd like to have got Skip back, but I don't think that's happening. And either side of him, it's going to be Lise Malou, which is a French lad we bought for £3.5 million from Nice. I think he's a starter now, and so he'll be to the right of Gilmour, and to the left, I think it'd either be McLean or Rupp. But I know we're obviously looking still at another sort of 2-3 signings and getting someone into that area.
What about Kieran Dow?
Yeah, he's. I think he's. If we played a 4-2-3-1, just the one sort of number 10 sitting behind Pookie. Yeah, I don't think he's a nail starter. I think he'll be there or thereabouts.
Okay. But not a starter in your opinion. He's 5.5 as well, which feels too much. So I take it no place for Anel Hernandez. You're not expecting to be a starter, first backup for the 2 10s, or perhaps if you want to change to 4-2-3-1 in game, perhaps come on as an impact player.
Hernandez, is an impact player. I think he'll be on the bench, and he's got the pace, hasn't he? So pretty much, I think that's what they'll use him for.
That's interesting then. So we're looking at Rashika and Cantwell probably playing off of Pookie and 3 sitters. The way you describe that just makes me feel like that's a more solid Norwich to what people are used to. And it's worth saying the statistics from last year bear fruit of that, I think, in the fact that defensively far less goals conceded, but then far less goals scored from 2 years previous as well.
I think if Skip did come back, for example, I think it would be a 4-3-3. But I think as it stands with the personnel we've got at the moment, I don't think we can do that, because Skip would then sit deeper than Gilmour, wouldn't he, if he was to return, or someone along them lines. I don't want to keep sort of banging on about Skip because he's your boy, isn't he? But
no. I think it's fair and reasonable to talk about it, because once Ndombele and Lo Celso are back training with Tottenham, if Nuno likes Ndombele, Lo Celso, Dele Alli, Højbjerg, and potentially looking to buy another, for example, or they can't shift Winks, Sissoko, etc., then I don't think Tottenham want Oliver Skip not playing football. And because there's a good relationship between the 2 clubs, and they know if he comes back to you, he would still start and get those minutes, I wouldn't say it's a definite no. I mean, I'd like to see Oliver Skip start a lot of games for Tottenham this season. But he's played for us on the right of a midfield 3.
Yeah, I
so far. So
about him. Yeah,
it might be that it wouldn't alter the system. I think for us, he's probably not ready to play as the deepest central as a 1 in a 4-3-3, and that looks like how we're going to play. Whereas for you, maybe he is. But I mean, Gilmour he's a super player, mate.
I think he's.
I'd have taken him on loan for a year, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a game changer a little bit. I mean, the thing is, I see a lot of talk on Norwich, but we're going to finish 20th. It's same old story. But a lot of people don't. I think we're a bit more unknown from that point of view. It's quite easy to say, Norwich don't spend much money. They ain't got a sort of a rich investor. People banging on about Brentford and everything like that. But You know, we got 97 points last year. I don't think we're going to be. We certainly ain't going to finish on 21 points again. Put it that way. I don't think. I think.
I'll cut that up now, mate.
I think Gilmore's the only player that made it to my draft, and he's not in there now from Norwich. And at the end of the day, it's probably on his Chelsea reputation more than his Norwich reputation.
Every time I've seen him, he bosses the game, doesn't he?
He's phenomenal.
Yeah,
he is phenomenal.
He's really good.
He will win some games for you, I think, just by his dominance in midfield. And you'll nick a 1-0 or a 2-0, and because of his dominance, the opposition won't get to score or what have you. So I really think he is an interesting outlet. You're kind of almost Aaron's is one to keep an eye on for me. Then if he's playing as a right winger, then I definitely would be interested in a 4.5 million Max Aarons that's playing so high up. Can Pukki deliver the goals though this season? Can he get 15 in the Premier League?
I don't think he can get 15. I know we're looking at signing someone in that position. Again, it's sort of an interchangeable position. Maybe someone who can sort of play a little bit wider, maybe a bit like we was linked with Josh King, for example, someone who can do a little bit of both. Pukki, I mentioned the last time I come on, just after we got promoted, like I think he'll score maybe 8 to 12 goals, something like that. I don't think it's probably going to get silly numbers, put it that way. I've got no issues with him starting, but what I do worry about is if he got injured, and that then leaves a lot of pressure on people like, for example, Adam Ida's probably now our second striker above Jordan Hugill. If Pukki was to get injured, he might be worth a look because he's 5 million, isn't he? Adam Ida. So, and that's worth saying about Pukki. He's not had a very good pre-season. He finished late from the Euros. He came back a couple of weeks late.
He didn't look fit at the Euros.
No, he didn't, because he got injured, didn't he, at the end of last season. Yep. So they rushed him back. He was only back in training for 4 days, and then he got ill. He's had a COVID isolation. They haven't actually said whether he's had it or not, but basically he's currently in isolation, which this close to the season ain't ideal, is it? So again, all eyes on the team at Newcastle at the weekend.
So Jordan Hugill is our 5.5 million man, is he?
No, it'd be Adam Ida. Yeah, he's 5 million. He's probably second choice now. But then having said
Hugill 5.5, they're taking the piss purely out of Planet FPL. I'm certain.
That's going to happen now. You're taking the piss out of him, but he'll score against Tottenham now. Always
probably.
Probably only get 1 goal season.
And it'll be against us, the Joe Linton special. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Ida, I think that's what I thought when I saw the prices. Ida's ahead of Hugill, surely. Ida, 5 million. I think that could be.
Start, yeah.
How old is he? 20, 21?
Yeah, something like that. He's not very old. He's broken to the Republic of Ireland team now, anyway. So he's.
He
only started 1 game last. Yeah, he only started 1 game for us last season. So it sort of goes to show, though, the reliance on Pukki and all Ida and Hugill's contribution really was from the bench.
I think he's a watch this player, though. He wouldn't be the first one. We've seen it with Cantwell, even from Norwich, who unfancied coming up from the Championship, hit the Premier League, and just the football suits him more for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think he's something
at a young age. It might. I think it's not impossible, and this is not a game week 1 shout at all. I don't think it's impossible that by the time we get into the middle of the season that he might be pushing Pukki. Is my opinion.
Quite possibly. Yeah, all depends on his development. But yeah, he's everything that sort of Puki's not. He's a lot more physical. He's a lot faster. Just offers something different. He can throw himself about a little bit, which is good to see. But I do think we need someone else in there. We've been linked with Adam Armstrong. I think that comes down though to whether Southampton. I think Southampton, West Ham will stump up the wages, and that would be his preference. All depends though. If that doesn't end up coming off, it might be we can do a deal later on in the window. I think there's 2-3.
As we discussed with Matt, I think he would be a super signing for Southampton. He would definitely be a super signing for you.
Yeah, I think so. What did he get? He got 20. Was it 20? Was it 28? I think he's got more goals than Pukki, I think, last year, didn't he? I think he was Championship second top scorer in the end.
Behind Tony.
Yeah.
So, Mark, can I buy 3 Norwich players at the start of this season? Can I go with Gunn, the centre half, whose name I've already forgotten, but I'll come back to.
Deli.
Thank you, Suj. and Gilmore.
Yeah, that would probably be the three. I've got two out of the three we mentioned at the moment,
Good
purely
lad.
sitting on my bench. But it's well, Gilmore could easily be Brownhill or Burnley, couldn't he?
In seriousness,
quite
if you were to go with the two outfield players, you would not go with Angus Gunn. That would be very silly.
Yeah, I know. I think it just depends on, obviously, I think it depends on formations at the moment as well, really. If you're going to go with Bamadelli, you need four playing, you need four good centre-halves, really, don't you? And you're never really going to start him, are you? Let's be honest.
No, but then it's an easy one constantly to never have that temptation, I think.
Yeah.
I'm possibly sold on Gilmore a bit, actually, because I've concerns about Basuma's ownership. I could see Gilmore playing 38 games for you and honestly finishing with 76 points.
Yeah, he'll get, what's he going to get? Goal? Get one, mightn't he? He might get two. He ain't going to score very often, but he might get a few assists. You just never know.
He might get a few yellow cards as well.
Yeah.
He might do. Yeah, he might.
I would see him as a 2 point per game player, but then that's what I want out of a third substitute.
If you're not going to play with five premium players, then five premium mids, then it could be a way to go.
And of course, if you are looking at a Gilmore versus Basuma, with respect, you are unlikely to put yourself in a position where you're going with three Norwich players, whereas it might open up for Brian. He says as Norwich start with 10 points from those horrific first four, and everyone goes crazy. I don't see that happening. Can we talk about Buendia a little bit?
Yep.
Is he in your squad?
Yeah.
Go on. Tell me, mate.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, the thing is, I was quite critical of him when he was promoted before, only because, he hadn't scored had he up until sort of the last few games. And
Mark had one of the best rants in Planet FPL history during the restart period. Basically banging on about you can shove your XGs, he ain't scored all season and all this kind of stuff. And he scored the next game, I think, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, it was the Watford game, wasn't it?
That's
away.
right.
Yeah. It was only a few minutes into the game as well. But the thing is, the XG was fantastic, wasn't it? And I was watching this guy actually in the flesh, and I'm thinking, I'm not seeing anything basically. Like, he was quite anonymous over the winter period when we sort of probably needed him most. And I mean, there was a couple of times he wasn't even getting into our team. He dropped him for a couple of games because Barker wasn't happy with his attitude, and he did come back stronger towards the end of the season. But I felt he was a bit of a letdown, in all honesty. And even obviously that carried on really into our championship season where Farker, it wasn't just Cantwell, Farker didn't play. Buendia wasn't in the team at the start either for the first few games. And eventually the window shut and he was able to sort of to get their head sorted and bring them back in gradually. But yeah, as for talent, and I mean, last season he was brilliant. He really was good last year. Fantastic to watch. Shame it weren't in the flesh, like we all had to be on iPlayer. But he was good, and for 6.5 million, I don't think you can argue with that, can you?
It's fair to say best player in the championship last season, isn't it?
I think so. I don't think anyone could argue with that, really. People who are playing
except for Oliver Skip.
Yeah.
Totally. Tony's high goal involvement.
And Tony,
Buendia
got voted, didn't he? I'm sure he did.
Yeah, he did. Buendia was player of the season championship. Playing the Gaffer game, you basically had to have Tony and Buendia, or so. But yeah, Buendia, really good.
And you think you'll be able to translate it to Villa and Premier League this time round compared to last time round?
Yeah, I think so. I think better players around him as well, I think. And I think I was quite disappointed when he went for the money he did, because I thought it would go, I was hoping it would be more than 40. In the end, it was 33, I think, million of add-ons, sort of to push it up to about 38. And I was thinking, I know it's COVID times and all that. Plus, since we got the business done early, give us a bit of capital to do some business. But yeah, I was hoping we got more for him than what we did.
Is he in for you, Mark, because of Villa's first 3 fixtures, or because you think he's brilliant and he's going to stay there for you?
No, I'm playing the game properly. I'm not looking at it like he used to play for Norwich whatsoever. I've got him in because I see Villa's fixtures and I see Buendia as a player, and I think for that value, if he weren't him, and Grealish was to stay, I'd probably gone Grealish, but you save $1.5 million or whatever. And Wednesday's fixtures, you can't argue that, can you? The first three.
No,
It's great value.
you definitely can't. And there are places to go if you need to get off it as well. I quite agree. I also want to ask you, Mark, before we finish up, who's your game week 1 captain?
Oh, I knew this question was coming.
I love the fact that, for the benefit of those on the audio, Mark looked like he glanced at a piece of paper saying, James is going to ask me who the game week 1 captain is.
Yeah, I've just seen my team. Yeah, it is who everyone's captain is going to be. But the thing is, it's going to be horrible. I'm stood there in the ground having to watch this fella.
Rip you apart.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But the problem is, right, so imagine I don't captain him, and that could wreck my FPL season, couldn't it, in the first game week? I could be, actually, even if I don't captain it, if I'm going to have to play my team, I might as well captain him, mightn't I? Because I want a good rank at the end of the season. So yeah.
So if you're going, because you haven't actually said his name, Mark, Mo Salah. I presume it's Salah or not Roberto Firmino, I'm guessing.
It will be Salah.
With that in mind, more importantly, who's your game week 2 captain?
Well, I don't have any Man City players at the moment.
Good lad.
So that remains to be seen. But in actual fact, I might not actually have any. I might take the punt of not going with any Man City players, because the problem is you just don't know who. Like, I was listening to Johnny on his one, and he sort of said, well, he thinks Miles will start the first game. I don't know. You'd have to rely on something nearer the time to say who he thinks will start the second game, maybe. And if I thought there was, I'm not saying we'll go there and pick up anything, far from it, but you'd need. I'm not going to do a transfer. I think they're not going to play. Put it that way.
Will you go and play that game this coming season like you would have played it 2 years ago? Will you go there and try and play football, or will you go there and like shut it down, like, and become a 4-4-5-1, for example? I think
we didn't have the personnel to do it before, and I think I think this time it'd be different, especially this early on in the season. We'll try and frustrate, and the best really we can hope for up there. Well, I don't know, like, teams that have gone up there and won before, haven't they? Like Palace seem to do it, and now and again they'll teams will pull something out of the hat. But yeah, it's asking a lot in it to go there and pick up a win or a draw or something. I do fancy us to score against Liverpool, by the way, before. I know people are sort of getting themselves all excited about double Liverpool defence, and I think it will create a lot of chances in that first game. Like, full house, fans back, 5:30 kick. Similar to the Man City game a couple of years ago, where it's just one of them sort of games where, everyone's sort of up against it. You can pull something out.
Where do you think you finish?
I've got one Liverpool defender, which is a sensible thing to do.
Sorry, say that again. We lost you for a sec there, Mark.
Yeah, I've got one Liverpool defender. I've got TAA, but I'm not comfortable with the double up with Robertson, because I think we'll probably score against them.
Noted. I'm looking at Burnley afterwards, Palace, Brentford, all them other Liverpool fixtures. Anyway, that's a different podcast, which is still to come. Do you think you stay up, Mark?
I don't think we'll finish bottom this time.
That wasn't a no or a yes.
Someone asked me on Twitter the other day where I think we'll finish, and I said between 15th and 19th. So we'll go with 16th, shall we?
Who do you think will finish bottom?
Brentford.
Okay. That's still to come as well. Who do you think will win the league?
Man City.
I thought you were going to say Chelsea, and say that's still to come as well. As is Leicester City, which is next. Mark, Jen, always a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Do you want to let the listeners know where they can find you on Twitter as well? Just shouting at your handle.
Yeah,
in case there's any new ones.
FPL_Badger.
Underscore all the way.
Yeah, underscore. Good lad.
Yes.
I'm off to learn how to pronounce Bamadelli again.
You're doing well, James. Give yourself a bit of credit. I think you're doing well.
To be fair, I struggle enough with like Salah and Son half the time, don't I? So I'm always going to have a problem. Next off, as said, we're off to the King Power to speak to Aaron Lagor about Leicester City.
Fantastic. And I think that's going to be really interesting with the new signings that they've got coming in. And maybe even thinking about Iheanacho and so many of the assets that we could be picking from Leicester. Yeah, ironically, James, I haven't got any in my draft at the moment. So definitely looking forward to speaking to Aaron and having my head turned.
I'm desperate to get some more information on Patson Daka from
Aaron. Yeah, indeed.
Rapid.
Thank you
Daka,
so much again,
Aaron.
Mark. Thank you so much again,
Cheers,
Mark,
boys.
for your time. And listeners, make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to the podcast. You'll get notified as soon as the next episode of Correspondent Week goes out. Other than that, stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, Mark. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man, child.